You are listening to the Overwatch League Network, the podcast with Deadeye on all the Overwatch League news and information. The show with Tactical Visor on the statistics and analysis. Here are your hosts, Totally Drunk, Spider, and Slambo.
What is up, guys, and welcome back to Overwatch League Network, the podcast with Deadeye on all the latest Overwatch League news, information, and esports analysis. I am your host, Totally Drunk, and tonight is episode 97. It's Grand Finals week. We got a lot to talk about tonight. We got, a couple of changes with coaching staffs. We have a player injury just ahead of the big match in itself. All of that and so much more. But before we can jump into the news and introduce you to my co-host, let me just quickly take a moment to thank everyone who is joining us tonight on Twitch for our live show. And of course to thank all of our repeat listeners out there. So joining me tonight, as always, is my co-host Spider. And Spider, apologies for last week, building a 450 plus pumpkin display absolutely destroyed me. I'm not feeling 100% because my sleep's been all over the place. But that's besides the point. It's Grand Finals week. I'm really excited. We finally get the finals that we've been hoping for. Not in the direction that we thought it would be initially, based off of, kind of the early upsets. But we got the top teams in the finals. Can't ask for too much more outside of that. But how was the past? It's been like 2 weeks at this point. How's the past 2 weeks been treating you, my friend?
I mean, first I want to say it's gourd to be here. I will have many pumpkin puns tonight, so get ready for that. But it's been good. I mean, the past 2 weeks have been fairly chill. We got to see the playoffs wrap up, prior to the grand final. Small indie game of Borderlands 3 came out, so I've been playing a metric butt ton of that. I actually just played Overwatch again for probably the first time since I talked to you in a podcast form. So it's been a while. The triumphant return ×2, and then just keeping myself busy around the house. Like, it's fall time, so we're decorating, we're cleaning up. This is a perfect weekend for that because there was not a whole lot of major Overwatch going on. There was the Rivalcade, the Rumble.
There was also the invitational for
the invitational
SEA, yeah.
Right. So there was a little bit of Overwatch going on to keep you busy, but nothing major going on. So just filled the time with actual stuff around the house, actual family stuff. So I got to enjoy the family. Played Untitled Goose Game, which if you haven't seen it, check it out, because you get to play as probably the most evil thing in the galaxy, a small goose that terrorizes a town. So it's been fun. But I mean, I know it's been pretty wonky for you, so I'm almost hesitant to ask, but how has your past 2 weeks been?
Exhausting. It's been good though. Like, over the weekend, I had Destodon over at the drive-in, so they showed The Exorcist, Christine, Night of the Creeps, and Zombies. So that was a really good time. It was a very long day, but I picked up some more hoodies, which I'm pretty happy about, from Jill and Greg, who are the couple that I always buy my hoodies from. And it's like every year, like, they bring out new hoodies, and then they kind of retire some of their older ones. So most of the ones that I picked up were kind of from their back stock. So if I didn't buy it then, chances were I probably would have missed it altogether. So I picked up hoodies for the Thane, They Live, Demons, and Killer Clowns from Outer Space. So my coat rack is entirely full of hoodies, and now I've started to invade the closet. So,
ready for fall, ready for the hoodie weather.
Yes, so if anyone needs a hoodie for BlizzCon, I got you guys covered. But outside of that, it's been pretty good. Not a whole lot of Overwatch. I need to hop on the Bastion's Brick Challenge, but I have been playing a ton of Diablo kind of in between, and I'm excited for the PlayStation State of Play tomorrow, when we'll hopefully get The Last of Us 2 release date, and I know they also announced a new Arkham game for Batman, so I'm excited about that. But outside of that, like, I have not had a chance to go check out all of the esports stuff from the past week. I'm happy that, we at least did have a distraction, kind of like in between, kind of the lull moment. But I'm gonna go back and see what exactly, Titawat did to get the MVP for the Invitational, and see how some of the academy for the Tier 2 teams just kind of ran shot through some of the actual affiliate teams. Because I heard there were some pretty big upsets there, so I am anxious to check that out. But we're here to talk about the Overwatch League, guys, so let's go ahead and jump into the news, now that we've kind of shuffled things around for more important stuff. So we do have some coaching updates that did happen here earlier in the week, so let's start out with the bigger one. The Houston Outlaws, everyone's favorite franchise, well, at least if you're Edinar. So they eventually released their head coach and one of their assistant coaches. So gone are Tyron and Hyunwoo earlier this week after, pretty lackluster Season 2 for the Outlaws. Now, both of them have been with the team since the team was created back in November of 2017, and they had worked with Africa Freaks prior to the Overwatch League. And, even like going back, Tyron was actually one of the South Korean Overwatch World Cup teams. I think that was the first year back in like 2016.
Yeah, that was all the way back.
That was back when, you had like the streaming personalities, or
yeah, that's when
people.
South Korea fielded a real team and everybody else fielded meme teams.
Basically. But, there was a lot of stuff going on with the Houston Outlaws this season. They were one of the few teams this year that unfortunately had an 0-7 stage. That was back in Stage 2. And, at the end of the day, this was a team that finished 16th in the league standings. Some of the meta shifts that we saw were a little bit to the Outlaws' benefit, but they didn't really have, the full use of being able to dig themselves out of the hole that they found themselves in. Now, outside of that, of course, you had the ongoing struggles in regards to, like, the financials with their ownership, with Optic Gaming, and, they basically didn't have a budget. Like, they were in the negative, there was all of that going on, and then you had Immortals Gaming Club, who also owned the LF Valiant, coming in and acquiring Optic, and that was in the middle of Stage 4. Now, I know, like, since then we've heard about, like, a potential buyer, as it was, like, one of the Texas-based, like, Houston, I think, real estate investors who was looking to purchase the franchise for, like, $40 million. But, they've had, like, so many distractions this year, and I know, like, even, like, Hexu was, like, a big part of the, the Green Wall has been attached to the Call of Duty League for Chicago, of all places. But I'll rant more about that some other time. But, with the amount of struggles that the Outlaws faced, I don't want to discredit the coaching staff too much, but there were a lot of times when, this is a meme answer, but there were times when we would see someone playing on the field when they should not have been out there. And, sometimes it worked out, but it's the fact that after the fact that they would be like, oh yeah, that wasn't supposed to happen, but it worked out. It's just like, why would you publicly come out and admit that? Like, it's a bad look for your franchise altogether.
Yeah, and I mean, as much as we like Tyrone, he's seems to be a pretty cool guy. It's not surprising that they would let them go, just because, I mean, when you look at it, over the first 2 seasons, Outlaws finished 31 and 37. So, finishing with a losing record isn't good. And then they did actually make it to 2 playoffs, but they have 0 playoff wins. So obviously your coaching staff isn't doing, what you would like them to. So now that the supposed freeze is over and there's actually movement within the organization, this isn't surprising. Like, this is normal business at this point. Like, any team that has a losing record after 2 seasons and contracts are up, you're going to lose people. So it didn't come as a shock to me. Like I saw some people were a little surprised because of how well like Tyrong is and the fact that like Flame is still there, which we don't know what the rest of the story is. Like this is just the beginning. Like what we're getting now is like the tip of the iceberg. I expect there's going to be a lot more movement in Houston, whether it's Flame or players or what. Like this is just the start, and this is usually where teams start. Like if you look at NFL or NBA or even MLB, even though it's a little more rare there. They'll let coaches go like at the end of a season or in the middle of the season and towards the end when they're already eliminated from playoffs. So this isn't surprising. And speaking of Tyrong specifically, and I'm glad you brought up his World Cup pedigree. There are some Korean-ish teams that have let other coaches go where I could see him getting back into it because he is known as a well-known coach. He does understand the game very well, and head coaches and just players that know the game at that level and can coach at that level are very rare. So another team will pick him up. Whether he ends up as a head coach or assistant coach, we'll see. But basically coaches of his pedigree are pretty rare. So I wouldn't expect him to not have a job long if he's still seeking to be in the scene. Like that's basically what it comes down to, which we haven't heard anything otherwise. So, this is just forward movement to the Outlaws. And this, as an Outlaw fan, you can be a little sad, but just know that this is hopefully in the name of making the team better. So, all the fans out there like Mel and Ed and R can just, hold their chin up high because this is the first forward movement of the Outlaws.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in some cases we've actually had teams just without head coaches altogether for the entirety of the season. So,
Are teams that probably would have fared just as well without head coaches, like Shanghai did in season 1.
Absolutely, and speaking of Shanghai, this was another team that had a little bit of movement in regards to their coaching staff, as they too let a few of their coaches go. So they announced the departure of their head coach, Blue Has, as well as their assistant coach, Levi, earlier. I want to say that was like yesterday, or was it today? It was one of the two. Oh, no, it was this week. So, this one I would say probably caught a little bit more people off guard just when you factor in the turnaround that we got to see from the Dragons from year to year. So Blue Has was the coach for Call to Panthera back when he was in Contenders Korea. And, this was like kind of during a transitional period when Dragons went out and basically picked up the majority of that Kondu Panthera roster following their, run into the grand finals against Runaway, which, well, we all know how that one played out because it was Runaway taking that one. And turns out both teams were actually Overwatch League ready despite all of the memery involved in that. But you have Levi, who had been with another pretty prominent Contenders Korea team, that being none other than Element Mystic, who proudly favored to win the gauntlet outside of Runaway, which is coming up here very soon. I can't wait for that. So that'll give us something to talk about, especially when we know that Gator is going to be competing for ATL Academy. So, I was looking at Twitter, and like a lot of people were like, but why though? It's all the big question marks. And, I can kind of understand the sentiment, but at the end of the day, just because there was a turnaround doesn't necessarily mean that they were the right fit for the team. Yes, they completely flipped the script. Yes, they made it to the playoffs. Yes, they won Stage 3. They were the last stage champions. But at the end of the day, they did not perform when it came to the playoffs. They had their fair share of struggles in the new meta once we went to 2-2-2. They definitely had to step down. They struggled throughout Stage 4. And, when you factor in what we saw based off of that alone, it really left a lot of questions surrounding this team and how they would fare. And while, yes, they were really great in the triple DPS meta at the time, or, at least what they were running to be meta, we saw a lot of fall off as soon as we went to 2-2-2. So, I'm not too flabbergasted by the change overall. But we've seen the amount of teams that have either transitioned to more Western Front. We've seen teams going full Korean. We still have a ton of mixed rosters out there. But when you look at a squad like KDP, I fully expect someone like Blue has to find a new team, whether it's in the Overwatch League or whether it's back in Contenders Korea. But I don't think he's gonna go anywhere. Like I'm pretty sure he's gonna stay put within the Overwatch League. It's just a matter of where is he going to fall at this point, because there are a number of teams right now that would be a perfect fit for him.
Yeah, I mean, this one did take me a little off guard. I can see your points, but I was a little surprised because they did do. I mean, you can't argue with the fact that they did exponentially better than they did before. I mean, they were at the ground floor. The only place to go was up. So they did better. They did have their struggles. They made it to a couple of playoffs, and then they eventually won. One of the stages. They didn't take home the grand final, which is disappointing for the team. But I feel like they were making forward momentum. Like they were obviously on the right track, and they did have struggles here and there. So that kind of leads me to believe that there was maybe some more internal stuff going on. Like maybe there was just disagreements. Like they didn't feel right for the team, or something like that. So beyond that, it like I said, it was a surprise to me because I felt like they were a decent fit for this team. But obviously they have to have another plan in mind, because you wouldn't let go of two coaches who basically turned your team around, along with certain players. I don't want to discount the players and say it was all the coaches, because the players obviously had a big role in it too. But two coaches that coached a winning Shanghai team, you wouldn't let that go if you didn't know who you were replacing them with. Like, it just seems a very odd move. Like, Houston letting go of their coaches and then looking for a coach makes sense. Taking a winning team and then getting rid of the coach, regardless of struggles, either means there was hard, like really bad internal struggles, or they have a plan in place that they want to move forward with. So that's basically what I would think, because from what we've heard, there isn't any, through the grapevine, like problems in Shanghai and stuff. And who knows, they could just keep it really quiet. But it seems to me like Shanghai just has a plan in place that they're going to move forward with. So I was a little surprised, but like you said, I actually think both of them will find teams pretty easily, just based on the merit of what they did with Shanghai. And then you go back to KDP as well. So I'm not real surprised if we see them again in the start of next season.
Yeah, one of the things I'm going to be most interested with in regards to the offseason, specifically with the coaching staffs, is how many teams are going to approach staff members from the Shock and the Titans. Because that's something that we see a lot in traditional sports. Whoever's in a championship, there are times when staffs kind of get picked apart. Like you'll go out and try to pick up an assistant coach to become a new head coach, things like that. I want to see if we're gonna have a lot of that this year. So I'm curious. Maybe we'll see, like Junk Bunk get a new spot on another team. Maybe someone will try to pick up Harsha.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe Washington will actually pay Harsha this. Who knows what'll happen.
So outside of that, there was one other staff change in here within the past week. That was for the Philadelphia Fusion, who let go of Kirby. So Kirby, I know in the inaugural season, had served as a head coach for the Philadelphia Fusion. This season, he was more like behind the scenes as their... I'm trying to remember what terminology they had used. I want to say it was like director of operations for the Fusion.
Director of operations for the Fusion.
So this year, you're looking at the Fusion. They finished in 10th place, which, after last season, probably a little bit of a letdown. But it was Philadelphia. Like, there were never really any point this season when you were like, man, Philadelphia is gonna win it all this year. So you know what? For 10th place for such an inconsistent team, actually probably better than what you would have expected.
I don't know. I think that's perfect. Like, for a team that's wildly inconsistent, what better place is there than the exact middle of the league? Like, you have your peaks and your valleys, and as long as they even out, you're gonna end up right in the middle.
There you go, and sure enough, that is exactly where they finished. So, Fusion, they weren't able to make a run of it in regards to, the playoffs. But that was a team that, like, I don't want to say, like, they completely lost their luster. But, there were several times when, yes, they would still go to that map 5, but it just felt like they either just didn't want to be there at the time, or they just kind of like lost that clutch factor. But I have to say, I was impressed that Poco, despite all of his complaints with the current meta, it didn't really come across like that on stage. I was expecting the level of disdain to like kind of come through, because there were times for the Fusion that we kind of saw their anger come out on stage, where maybe they just didn't feel like they wanted to be there, but that actually wasn't the case come playoff time. So sure enough, it just comes to show that, when there's money involved, there's a little bit more incentive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Kirby, this one actually really surprised me, because it seems, based off the shorthanded tweet, that it to me, that just reads like there was just a separation. Like they were like, all right, he was ready to go, which kind of leads into like what you were talking about. Like it seems like the whole team culture has changed. It seems like there's a problem with the team culture. And even though he wasn't the coach, he was obviously still deeply involved with the team, deeply involved with the operations. It who knows? Maybe there was a problem going into season 3. Maybe just the overall strain of going in 10th place. Just he decided to start looking for other opportunities, or move on out. Who knows? But for somebody who coached them to the finals in the first season, and then led them to I wouldn't say successful season 2, but not a not a disastrous season 2. It did surprise me that he didn't at least stay on in operations. Now, if he was a coach, I could probably make a more detailed argument of he probably needed to go at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But again, somebody that ingrained in the scene, dealing with multicultural teams, if he wants a job, he can find one. Like Toronto will scoop him up. There are multiple teams that would kill for somebody that has his experience at this point. Like experience in the league is so important right now, especially going into homestands and stuff. You're going to need somebody that can walk you through and coach you through a lot of this stuff, because we have the current players, but you got to remember, we're going to get a whole bunch of fresh new players that are going to need coaching and stuff like this. So having someone experienced like Kirby that has dealt with coaching and operations will be a huge boon to a team. So again, if he wants a job in the league, I'm sure he'll easily find one.
Yeah, and we're getting really close to the point when we're gonna hit like that first window in regards to sign-ins when it comes to like player contracts, coach contracts, things like that. So as soon as the grand finals are up and done with, you're gonna be seeing a lot of release news, a lot of like LFT tweets, things like that. So we're getting very close to that point. So we'll have a lot more to talk about on that front when we see who all is on the chopping block. But of course, it's Grand Finals week. There's a lot of stuff going on with the Grand Finals. We had a ton of announcements in regards to musical acts. They also have, something in regards to, like, cosmetics that you can get by watching the Grand Finals. So let's start by talking about the performances that we'll get to see for the Grand Finals. So the first one, which was their headliner, was they announced that Grammy-winning songwriter and DJ Zedd will be performing at the Grand Finals, which happened on September 29th. So I know Zedd right now is currently touring North America. And we know he is a huge fan of Overwatch. So leading up to the announcement, of course, we had cryptic tweets being sent out containing, some of the lyrics from some of Zedd's bigger songs. And, this is someone who we're no stranger with. Like, we've seen him at the World Cup the past year. He's been a huge Overwatch fan. I know, like, he had hit Grandmaster at one point last year. And, so much of this boils back to the meme that took place last year with DJ Khaled. But it seems like, and we do have more announcements in regards to the performers. They have a very distinct way about going about them. Like, we don't have anyone that differentiates too much from the main headliner because most of them are DJs. So they kind of like kept that theme throughout. But I'm really curious to see what they're going to do. Like, I know Ed and I were kind of talking on Here's Stuff and I about, things that we could see. Because, Zed, he, like most DJs, he features a lot of different singers, but chances are they're not going to be there. I was hoping that maybe we'll get to see Zed coming out as Lucio and then remixing some of Lucio's album, which is, readily out there, so that's a possibility. Or maybe, they'll bring it back and, maybe do some of the in-game music and do remixes that way. I don't know, but I feel like with the lineup that they have this year, they're going to tailor more to the audience and just the game in itself. So there's a lot of different possibilities that we could see, but I know there's been a lot of people out there who are just like, who? Like, a lot of people don't know Zed primarily just because a lot of people just don't really listen to, like, EDM or house music. But Zed is one of the bigger names out there. So, like, I was ecstatic to hear about this. I'm definitely going to leave work early so I can catch the pre-show, because he is performing before the actual grand finals.
Right.
So I'm looking forward to this.
So first, called it, like, nailed it. Like, come on. My predictions are rarely right in terms of this kind of stuff, so I am gonna milk this one. But I think the biggest thing he brings to it is, like, he genuinely likes the game. Like, he's not like as much of a meme as DJ Khaled was and stuff like that. Another one. The problem was it just didn't feel genuine. Like, first of all, it's hard to please a crowd that's not there for that type of music. And Zed's going to have the same problem. As you mentioned, some people don't even know who he is. But people are a little more lenient with it when they know that you like the game. They know that you're genuine. And anybody who's watched Overwatch League has seen Zed. Like, they featured him before, like you said, Overwatch World Cup. He's actually showed up on Overwatch League before. So I think that just being genuine is enough to really help him. And I do hope that they do, like, more of a focus on, like, the game music and stuff like that, because a lot of the game music is really catchy and it is really easy to remix. And I'm not just saying that because I have a playlist that says Overwatch remixes on my Spotify, because it is good music that he could take and mix pretty easily, and mix his own songs in there too. So I think this was the right choice, and I'm not just saying that because I called it, but I couldn't think of a better person then, and I can't think of someone better now. And house DJs, even if you're not into that kind of music, are generally in an arena probably the easiest thing that you could get most people to at least not absolutely hate. Because most people are just like, all right, it's not my thing. So, we'll just enjoy the energy and we'll enjoy the hype and stuff like that. So I think that was the right choice. And the next musical guest, I think, is just there for, like, the wow factor. So I'm excited for him too.
Absolutely. So there are two other musical guests that were announced. So first up, we do have Questlove, who that's probably another name that, I mean, if you watch Late Night, you probably know this person because he does play with the Roots.
If you know anything about music, you should know about Questlove. Like, I saw Deathblow tweet, like, I have no idea who this guy is, and I'm like, look, all right, I'm not huge into R&B music. I'm not huge into that. Like, that's not really my cup of tea. But if you don't understand who the Roots are and what they did for R&B music, you are living in a cave. Like, he is, like, if you're talking about, like, musical pedigree, it's like R&B has, like, a few people you put up on the pillar. the Roots are definitely one of them. So like Questlove comes from a ridiculous music pedigree. So if you don't know who that is, I feel sorry for you, even if you don't like that kind of music.
So, yeah, I mean, he's most prominent for his work with the Roots. I know he's worked with a lot of other people in regards to being a producer. He's worked with like Amy Winehouse. He's worked with John Legend. And you know he's gonna be there like working the breaks, kind of like in between stuff. And you know I'm really curious to see how this is all going to come together. So it seems like, you know, this is all about the redemption arc with this. They don't want a repeat performance of what we got last year. And I do kind of like how they're kind of going about like the same route that we saw with BlizzCon last year, where it's kind of like a number of different artists that they have approached. So, you know, they went out, they got Zed, they got Questlove, and I know they also got another EDM artist in Martin Garrix, who's going to be, I want to say like he was doing like kind of like the pre-show aspect, because they got stuff like kind of like going on throughout the entirety of the grand final, so that was more of like a fan fest, if I'm not mistaken.
He's the night before, so he's doing a show Saturday night, and then there's actually another EDM artist at the Fan Fest, and I think he might be at the Fan Fest too, but they have someone separate there. So I feel like they're just wrapping in all these artists to say like, look, we have music, like we're sorry for DJ Khaled, we're sorry.
Yeah, so they got Martin Garrix. I think the other DJ they announced was DJ Ghost for the Fan Fest, which is going to be the morning of the 28th. So all of that's going to be taking place near Xfinity Live, so be sure if you're out there to go check that out. But just as a reminder, you know, the pregame stuff with Questlove will be at, you know, 1:30 Central Time, PM, and then the grand finals in itself starts at 2 p.m. Central Time on the 29th. So across the board, I'm pretty happy with who they got. But, you know, like, hopefully, like, people will actually be into it. And I really feel like with the people that they have this year, that they'll be more drawn in. I want to see them do something in regards to the Overwatch music in itself, because this is like the perfect space for them to tie that in. And since we already know that there's remixes, it really wouldn't be that much work. So we'll see what happens in that regard. So outside of that, you know, it is Grand Finals week, and they actually made some announcements in regards to earning cosmetic rewards this year. So what they're doing is they are giving out sprays and icons, and it's going to be based on how much time you spend watching a live broadcast. So in order to unlock everything, you need to watch at least 3 hours. So you get new stuff at every hour. So with 1 hour, they have a Wrecking Ball Watch Party spray. There is a Grand Finals trophy icon at 2 hours. And then for the 3 hour mark, you get a Payload Watch Party spray. So, you know, as with everything else, basically, in order to get these rewards, you need to make sure that you're viewing the Grand Finals in a way that Blizzard can recognize. You know, whether that is via the Overwatch League website, you can watch it via the in-game client, you know, through Twitch, all of that good stuff. Just make sure that your accounts are linked on that front. But Spider, like, you might be a little SOL, like, if you're not going to be home for this stuff.
Yeah, that's the one thing I'm worried about. Like, I hope there's like some way that we can, you know, the people that actually get to go there will get this stuff. You know, if I don't suss anything out, because we did, you know, we opted for one of the upgrade packages, not the ridiculous like super grandmaster one, just like the first one where you get like the bag of goodies and stuff, and like your own entrance, like whatever the first one was, that was like a few more. But maybe there'll be like a code in there or something for these, or who knows what they'll do. But if not, like if I don't see anything of that, you know, I'm gonna be like calling my wife, be like, hey, just turn Overwatch League on the computer, just set it to mute. And she did say that maybe they'll watch to see if they can see me for a little bit, but I really don't expect that.
In a sea of humanity.
Yeah, but not that they would see me, that she would actually turn it on and watch it. I'm not even making it that far. But these were really cute. I liked all these. I mean, if if you participated last year, it's the same format. Like, you just watch and earn. And the ones last year were really nice, and these are really nice too. I don't think I've ever used them, but as a collector, it's something that I'd like to have. But at the end of the day, if I don't get them, I'm still just gonna enjoy my experience there. Like, that's gonna be more fun than 3 sprays that I will never use. So
It's like to be one of those situations when you go somewhere and you're like, did I leave the stove on?
yeah, did I leave Twitch up? Like, did I? Oh, I mean, here's the thing though. I could always just pull it up on my phone and watch it on my phone while I'm watching it there, and get the sprays. Drain the crap out of my phone battery, but who knows? Like, it's cool. Like, this isn't a surprise to me. I figured they would do something, and they're cool looking sprays. So definitely make sure your BattleNet accounts are linked, no matter how you're watching, so you at least get it if you do plan on watching.
And another thing too, if you don't have your BattleNet account linked at this point,
what are you doing?
like,
Farming
you're missing out on
tokens
a
is
lot.
the whole reason to watch the league. I mean, the games are great, but yeah, farming tokens. And I have committed to spend everything but 200 coins, because I know there's going to be an MVP skin. 200 everything but 200 coins for the team that wins. So that's going to be like 9 skins. So assuming I don't get any more tokens, so nine skins of the roster will go to the winning team. So I hope the Titans win, because I like their skins better, but I also hope the Shock wins, which we'll get into later.
Sinatra did say that his MVP skin was going to be for Zarya.
Woo!
And not Tracer. Or Bastion.
Yeah.
Or whatever the other guesses were on that front.
At least he could focus long enough to talk and pay attention. Because we missed out on it last week, but I really wanted to talk about how wasn't it Violet who didn't shake Jeff's hand?
Well, that was Stitch.
Stitch, that's who it was. It was on Vancouver. Yeah, how Stitch was like staring off into the distance, like what at that moment, what are you thinking of that's so important that you can't realize that you're supposed to shake Jeff Kaplan's hand? Like, I was racking my brain about it. Like, what is so important? Like, or are you like, did I leave the stove on? The only thing I came up with is, how does the glue not stick to the inside of the bottle? Yeah. Crap. Now I'm not going to be able to talk the rest of the show. I'm just going to think about that.
I think my favorite thing to come out of that was when Custa was doing the Custa News Network, since he had a very similar moment with Kaplan, and it's just like, oh man, that's rough.
I hate to see it,
but you know what? Our deaf and savior Papa Jeff kept praise him. He transitioned nicely from that point. What a professional.
He worked through it like a champ.
But man, it was a feels bad moment for Stitch for sure, and you could see the embarrassment after the fact when he realized it was Kaplan. But you know what? There are other things that people are hoping to recover from, because there was another incident that kind of happened here over the last week, and this one is on the opposite side of the camp, with the San Francisco Shock. So it turns out, Striker kind of got injured, like ahead of the grand finals, which you hate to see. It was kind of like a week out from the grand finals at this point. So Striker, he suffered a little bit of a hand and leg injury. So we didn't really hear too much in regards to details. But we did see posts on his Twitter. He was bandaged up, like by his knee, on his left hand. And, it was, we saw a lot of the community kind of like chiming in after the fact, in regards to his teammates, just trying to figure out, what the heck happened. And it just comes to show, maybe you shouldn't be doing like get putting yourself in a position, whether it was like a skateboard, a scooter, whatever. But it's just like the timing of this was just absolutely impeccable. But it does seem like it's not serious to the point where it's going to ensure that he's not going to play in the grand final. So, that does bode well in regards to the Shock. So it does seem like he's going to be healed enough to actually play in the grand finals. Because I know initially, like, that was my big thing. I was like, oh, great. What is this going to mean for the Shock? But then you remember, this is a team who, they're kind of pretty deep, in regards to who they have on that roster. And we've basically seen the entirety of that team anyway. So, if it was a case of, next number up, they probably would have been okay.
Yeah, this is definitely in the file of you hate to see it. But as you mentioned, it's not anything that seems to prevent him to play. We'll see if it has an effect on his play. But because it did look pretty rough. But before like the big game and stuff like that, like you gotta not be doing dumb stuff. Like, come on, man. Like, this is the whole reason you're there. And from Boston to San Francisco, this is like Striker's, revenge arc almost. So I hope he's fully functional and right on form for the grand finals, because he has been integral in their success, so far in the postseason. I mean, they ram shot through the lower bracket, and he was definitely a part of what almost took them, to the win against Atlanta. So I don't know, like, it looked pretty rough, but it doesn't seem to affect him that much. So we'll see, Sunday how it plays out. But man, don't do dumb stuff.
Yeah, I have a feeling like next time they're just gonna put him in bubble wrap or protective bubble, one of the two.
That would be pretty funny.
Just so something like that doesn't happen again. You gotta protect your assets. That's all you need to do. Since we did miss last week, let's briefly kind of like recap what happened in regards to how we got to the grand final. So, we saw the Hangzhou Spark kind of continue their Cinderella streak by, beating the Atlanta Reign. That was a pretty big surprise for a lot of people. Shock, as we mentioned, they kind of run shot through the lower brackets, picking up 4-0 after 4-0. So we saw them beat the Gladiators. We saw them beat the Spark as well as the Excelsior. But I will say, it did seem like in that second week, we thought we were going to have closer matches. That didn't really happen, but the Titans versus Excelsior match was pretty close. It went the distance. Unfortunately for New York, there are a couple of map types that they just did not do well in. Pulling control and losing both 2 was pretty rough across the board. But, it did leave, a couple of questions with the Titans. But, I'm just happy that at the end of the day, we got to the point where that lower bracket didn't play out exactly how it was prior, because, for the longest time in the lower bracket, we saw basically the higher seed winning out. And then, of course, the Shock kind of played the spoiler in regards to the lower bracket finals when they did topple the Excelsior. But I'm happy to see that for all of the questions that we had about New York, they came out, they didn't choke out of the gate. They kind of ran some pretty off-kilter stuff with some of their strategies, which didn't really come into play as much as, Edenar would have expected against the Titans, and they still kept it really close. So if you're New York, I won't say like they are 100% back, that was a very good step forward for that team. And of course we had that very emotional moment between, say, Bjolby and Flower, when, Flower unfortunately kind of like came in at a crappy time, and, SBD was there to like holding his hand, trying to calm him down after being put in a really rough spot, which was a very touching moment. But man, like, as soon as the Shock got dropped to the lower bracket, you could just tell, like, okay, here we go, and then they just come in and they just dominate everyone. So I'm not gonna say it like I expect that to happen to the Titans, or, if the Titans were dropped to the lower bracket, that the Shock would have been able to do that to them. It does really make you wonder, like, how good are the Shock at this point? Because for the longest time this season, you have the Shock and the Titans, who have been the most consistent teams. But for the Shock to just dominate in the fashion that they did, that's just not something you get to see. So we'll see how much they can ride that momentum, and how much that kind of like 2 weeks in between derailed that, or, put, an end to it. But one way or another, the grand finals are going to be epic. We got the rubber match between the Shock and the Titans, since they're 2-2 at this point, and I can't wait. But the Shock, what else can you say about their run through the lowers that hasn't already been said at this point?
Yeah, I mean, the to the XL specifically, I am glad to see that they did make a run and they looked really well, because it was almost a return to form. Because before all the memes and all the reinforced drama and all of that, way back in season one, they were a playoff winning team. Like, they were a very competent, very winning team. It wasn't until the end of season one that the whole sandbagging playoff debacle started to happen. And then obviously season two, the meta didn't really fit them, but they still held their head above water, frankly, just because they were in an easier division. And they are a talented team, but they just couldn't hang in the playoffs. I think more so due to the meta rather than any sort of curse or anything like that. So watching them return to actually win playoff games, to kind of step in Reinforce's face after saying that they're not a stacked roster and stuff like that, because
that'll never win a game.
yeah, exactly. So I was happy to see it. Like, as much as I am not an NYXL fan, and I don't really root for them in any case. You can't help but to see like the heart these guys had, like especially like you said with the SBB moment and Flower. You can see like the team dynamic is there. I feel like they do have a team that could win championships. Like they need to figure out what's going on with their DPS a little bit more. But I think all their pieces are acceptable for a playoff winning team. They just need to figure some stuff out. So I was happy to see that. I was sad to see the Spark, look so good and then look immediately so bad. So that was disappointing, but that was more indicative of the Shock's ability to play, and we saw that like the Shock just play the game a different way than any other team, because if you watch the Vancouver NYXL match and then watch the Shock NYXL match, it was like night and day, like how the Shock adapted to Bastion and stuff like that. So this is going to be a really, really good final. Even though like we were just talking about, the previous playoffs kind of started to get a little more and more lopsided. Like, I feel like the first round was a lot of really close games, and then it was basically the Vancouver Titans and the San Francisco Shock story, which has led us here.
Imagine that, when all is said and done, we have the two teams who have really been at the forefront all season long in the grand finals. You couldn't ask for a better match. So, we don't have the Cinderella team in the grand finals. We don't have anyone just, making their way through the play-in, since, both play-in teams were immediately eliminated on that front. But I'm just happy, I'm kind of thankful that we didn't get Shock Titans in like the lower bracket or the upper bracket at this point. So it all comes down to this, so we're actually get the rubber match for the grand finals. And, the stakes couldn't be any higher on that front. So let's talk about these two teams in regards to the playoffs. So, something that the Titans have done really well in the playoff run so far has been their domination on control. This is a team that is currently 6-0. And, across the board, they've been doing fairly well. So I know like they were like kind of doing breakdowns of like the map pool, things like that. The Shock do have the better differentials in regards to the assault maps. Um, the control maps are in favor of the Titans. Same with hybrid. Same with escort. So it does really make you question: can the Shock turn things around in regards to winning some of these map art like archetypes just outright? Because we've seen a lot of situations in the playoffs this year where if you're not able to literally wrestle control away, things can get away from you really quickly. You know, it was a downfall for the Excelsior not being able to pick up a win on control. They couldn't really bounce back at that point, and it just gives a team like the Titans the opportunity to run away with the series. So you know, if the Shock can come in, even if they split control, that is a huge deal. Because like, there's even been instances where, because of the way the format works, with the losers being able to pick the map that we're playing on, we've seen a lot of series that have traded wins back and forth. So that first control point, or that first control map, is absolutely substantial for how the rest of the series is going to play off. And you know, when you look at it, you know, for the Titans, on Busan, like, they only have 3 losses. On Ilios, they only have 3 losses. Lijiang only 2 losses. So you have a team who is currently 30-8 on control. And when you play 2 control maps per series, that does lead you more in the driver's seat at this point. So if you're the Titans, you know, I wouldn't be like, oh man, like, the Shock have basically come in and they've just bludgeoned everyone that's been in their way outside of, you know, the Reign series in the opening rounds. But you know, there's always the thing where it's just like, man, like, you know, we struggled a little bit against New York, but you know, thankfully, where God sends that control, hopefully we'll be able to ride that momentum. But it's just a culmination of knowing that, you know, the Titans have been consistently, you know, the top team in the league this year. And then you have the Shock, who have been their biggest opposition, their biggest rival. And we get to see it unfold again with, you know, I'm trying to remember, like, what the prize pool was. It was like 1.1 million, like, for the playoffs, which is absolutely ridiculous for Overwatch. But if you're the Shock, man, you're kind of hoping that Ilios is going to be one of the two, because like, that's the one that they are favored in, even in the head-to-head. Granted, that was only one time so far this season.
Yeah, this is going to be a great game, and like you said, that first control map is super important, and the Titans are the only team to not lose a control map at all in the playoffs. So they definitely have the advantage. And there's only been one game where the team that has lost, basically, there's only been one game where the team that has won the first control map has lost the match. So that just shows you how, in the playoffs, that shows you how important this is. And, you know, when you look at these teams as a whole, right? And this is going to start building my argument why I think the Shock is going to win. But as a whole, like, if you go all the way back, like, the only time the Titans have beat the Shock were stage 1. Every other time the Shock have beaten the Titans that they've played them. Now, it's been very close, but still, you gotta look at these two teams. Like, the Titans are the team with the longest match win streak in season 2, basically 2.5 stages. You know, they have 3 of the top 5 players in the limbs per 10 in the postseason, which Twilight, Somansu, and Haskell. And then, you know, the top player in damage per 10, which is Janu. So the Titans clearly have the tools that they need. But the Shock, man, like, you can't discount them. Like, taking away their golden run in the lower bracket, they were the only team to have the golden stage this season, or any season so far. They were the only team to appear in all the stage finals. You know, they didn't win them all, obviously, but they were the only ones to to at least show up in all the stage finals. And they actually had a better map differential despite having more losses than the Titans. Like, that's crazy to think about. So, the Shock obviously are a very talented team. The Titans are obviously a very talented team. But obviously there's going to be some players that we want to look out for, right? When you go into this match, most eyes are going to be on Sinatra and Striker and Hacksaw, like the DPS players. But Violet and Twilight are like low key the players on their teams that are like pushing their teams to the wins. Like Violet is third overall in eliminations per 10. Second overall in fewest deaths per 10, and fifth overall for healing, and then second overall in supports for damage per 10. Just supports. Like everything else was overall, but the damage is just in supports because supports obviously are not doing Sigma type damage right now. So Violet is a monster. And the Shock have more playtime. Like that's another thing. Like as I was looking into doing analysis and stuff like that, you can't discount that the Shock just have more stage playtime, just by virtue of having to play more games at the low bracket. And that accounts to about total of 2 hours of playtime split amongst multiple players. So some players have a little more, a little less. I don't think that'll play a big role, but I did want to mention it because they do have more practice under the meta, but what that means is they also have more tape to be studied. That's basically what it's going to come down to me. Is like when looking at these two teams, I wanted to get most of the stats out of the way because the stats to me don't matter that much, but I did want to touch on them. The Shock, when they played NYXL, adapted to the Bastion strategy much, much faster. So to me, if I was coaching the Shock, which I'm nowhere near as smart as Krusty, like obviously this is just me armchair quarterbacking. The first play you would want to do is you would want to run Bastion comps because you saw the Titans had problems with that. That would not be your main strategy. That would be let's make the Titans adjust to this. And if they adjust to it, then you run a main strategy. Like basically that's not even plan A. That's just force the Titans to adapt because they've shown that they've had problems with it in the past. And as good as the Titans are and as good as the Shock is, you fully expect them to be able to adapt to it with 2 extra weeks of practice at this point. Like they had already sort of figured it out when they played NYXL, but they still struggled with it on certain points. So that would be my go-to as the Shock. Unfortunately, what that would do for the Shock, and it kind of puts them on a back foot if the Titans pivot to something they're not expecting. So it adds a little bit of surprise factor to the Titans. So there is a lot of mind games that can go on here, and we saw it kind of with the Titans and NYXL. We didn't see it with the NYXL Shock because the Shock just didn't care what they ran. Like they just said, "Oh, cool, you're running Bastion now. Here's what we're gonna do about it. Oh, cool, you're not running Bastion. Here's what we're gonna do about it." And that's how both of these teams are gonna have to be at this point. They're gonna have to say, "Oh, you're running the main now. We need to switch to the Reaper Doomfist. Oh, you're not running the main now. We gotta pivot." So that would be the game plan I would look at. In terms of like individual matchups, there really isn't a whole lot to differentiate. Like there's little ups and downs here. Like I said, Janu has the more damage than Choi Hoban, but Choi Hoban dies less. Like as a whole, San Francisco dies a lot less than Vancouver Titans per 10 minutes, but Vancouver racks up a lot more kills. So there's definitely a more high risk, high reward play style, which shouldn't surprise anybody who's watched the Titans at all this season. Like it's not
even
quite
without Bumper.
right. It's not quite to Bumper level, but it's still there. But circling all the way back around, because I want to wrap up this, preview, is I mentioned Violet earlier, how he's like low key MVP for the Shock. I did mention Twilight too. Unfortunately for Violet, everything Violet does except die Twilight does better. So Twilight beats him out in pretty much every category. So those are the two that I'm gonna definitely look towards watching, because they can have a huge impact. You had mentioned some maps. So just in closing, obviously Control is very tight and favored. Assault is Shock favored, but I should mention that if the Titans do win Control, Shock should absolutely avoid picking Kings Row.
Oh yeah.
Because the Titans are 11-2 on Kings Row, and 4 of those 11 wins have come from the Shock.
And that's the biggest takeaway in the head-to-head, is that map in particular, because
Right.
out of the rest of the map pool, there's basically like a 1-0 advantage in the
Right.
head-to-head, which is more favored in regards to the Titans. But it's not like a huge enough difference where you're like, oh man, Titans are gonna run away with it, because that advantage map-wise in regards to the playoff pool is 4-3.
Yeah.
Which, oddly enough, just so happens to be, the score that we constantly see whenever these teams go head-to-head on that front. But it's crazy, like, when you look at these maps in the Shock's run, when you look at Assault, they're 5-0 on Hanamura, they're 9-0 on Anubis. And, for the Titans, while they've had a couple of losses here and there, like, their map record isn't that bad. They're 4-1 on Hanamura, they have 10 wins on Anubis, but granted, they played 14 times on Anubis as opposed to the Shock's 9. But, this is one of those situations where if you're able to maintain that momentum that you've had in the playoffs, so much of this could just boil down to that first map, and that could dictate how things go from here on out. So if you're the Titans, if you lose, I can't remember what order it goes, but if you're able to pick your hybrid map, obviously you're gonna go to Kings Row, because you've just styled on the Shock throughout the season, and even across the season, the Shock have struggled on that map. Now, granted, if you do not include how they fared against the Titans, they're 8-1 on Kings Row. But then the Titans are up 4-0 on that front. But man, there are just so many maps out there in this map pool that there's only like a 1-game differential between the two throughout the season. So this really is as close as it gets. But at the end of the day, every time these two teams face off against one another, the series really is too close to tell. Like, on paper, I feel like a lot of people are going to favor the Shock just due to the run that they have been on, and it's been impressive. Like, you can't deny the role that the Shock have been on ever since that loss against the Reign. Whether you want to count that as a fluke or just one big mishap, like a big C9, whatever. The Shock have just been running right through everyone, and then, you have... This isn't even David versus Goliath story. You have 2 Titans in this sense. You're the 2 teams who have been really just crushing everyone along the way. 2 teams that have adapted in different ways in regards to the evolving metas over the course of this season. And for me, like, the Shock have always been the team that have kind of gone their own way with dealing with things. And that's worked very well for them. But can they come out with the championship? I'm so torn on this, because obviously, I'm rooting for the Titans. That's not going to surprise anyone. Do I expect this to go the distance? 100%. Like, anything less than that, to me...
I hope so.
...would be disappointing, because I don't want to see the Shock just come in and 4-0 the Titans. Like, I don't think... Like, there's even a strong possibility of that happening, just with the way that the Titans have played throughout the season. But you're going to have these 2 teams, and I don't think, like, anyone's going to, like, surefire have control of the series at any point. Like, I don't think we're going to see, like, a 2-0 lead going into, like, a halftime or anything like that. I'm expecting to have a lot of trades back and forth. It's just a matter of who can come back from the brink. And when all is said and done, you have the 2 teams who have been the strongest at being able to recollect themselves. You have 2 teams that have that championship pedigree. And And unfortunately, one of them is going to have to give. And it might not be like a complete unbuckling, you know? It might just be, maybe there's just a force alt error that could come down to it when all is said and done. I'm pulling for the Titans. My head says that the Shock will end up taking it, though, for the grand finals. But, you know, if Titans can just come in and, you know, pick up 2 wins on control, like, I don't see a situation where the Shock will be able to rebound. But, you know, for argument's purposes, like, I really want Titan to win, just so we can shut up all the final naysayers. But I think the Shock will take it. But if Titans win both control, Titans will end up taking it, I think.
Right, and that's the biggest argument in the Titans' favor, because it goes control, hybrid, assault, escort, and then obviously repeats from there. So, you know, assume the Titans win the first one, right? Then the Shock get to pick. Obviously, they're not going to pick King's Row. And if they do, maybe I am smarter than Krusty. I don't know.
Well, that's the thing. Like, when you look at the hybrid maps that are in the pool, like, both of them only have 1 loss on Eichenwald. Now, granted, that's one that they haven't faced off against one another. You obviously don't pick King's Row, like, since the Titans have such a lead. But then, like, even Umbani, Titans are only up 1-0, but, you know, you have records of 6-2 and 7-3. So there's not, like, a clear, like, indicator of where to go in that sense that, like, the Shock would have the major advantage on either side. So it's kind of a coin toss.
You just don't pick King's Row.
What? You pick one of the two.
And assuming you can win that one, because look at it. If you're coaching a team and you're like, all right, we're not even gonna we're gonna practice King's Row a little bit on the off chance we win. Not even on the off chance. All right, let me reevaluate this. So you want to think you win the control map, right? So you have to figure out you're going to King's Row, because that's what the Titans are going to pick. So you should practice King's Row. But say you want to, you're like, okay, well, we need to practice if we get our pick. So then you pick one of those 2 maps and you practice the crap out of it. Probably Numbani, because I feel like the Shock do pretty well on Numbani. And then if you win your map pick, then the Titans get to pick. Obviously, the Titans don't want to pick Anubis, because that's their weaker map. Like you said, the Assault's pretty even, but it is their weaker map. They have a better shot at, you know, picking their own map. So I could theoretically see the Titans winning this, because if you think about it, they win the first map, lose the second map, win the third map, go to another control map that it doesn't matter what it is. If they could win that, they're up 3-1. So it's going to be hard for the Shock to come back and win. And I'm not saying it's impossible, but the Titans have looked really good on Eichenwald in the postseason. Like, as good as they look on King's Road, they look pretty much just as good as on Eichenwald in the postseason. So at that point, as the Shock, you're put in a really bad place. You're basically like, do I choose the map that they crush us on, or the map that they could potentially crush us on for match point? Like, that is a rough place to be. So Shock, as a game plan, need to make sure that they come out and win both control and assault. Like, at very least, like, obviously you want to go up 3-0, but you should focus on, you know, a brawly map that you could potentially win, because that's what control comes down to. Like, there's not set plays like on, you know, the other maps, like payload maps and stuff. It's basically a brawl. So whoever brawls better wins control, which is why the Titans do so well. So you go for the shit show map and try to pick that one up. Then you hope you can pick up, you know, the second map. But there's not a good chance, because they're going to pick a map that they've probably crushed you on. And then you pick up a third map. So I think, you know, circling all the way back around, it's going to come down to that first map very heavily. And whoever loses that first map is going to have a huge uphill battle, just in terms of map picks. Like, and it's really going to show us, like, if the Titans come out, or if the Shock come out and 4-0 the other team, then they are clearly the champions. Like their level of play is already on another level at that point for this season. I don't expect that to happen. Like first of all, I don't hope that happens because I have to drive 2 hours to get there, and I don't want to see 4 maps. Okay, I want to see a little bit more. So I'm not talking like 9 or 10 maps. Like I don't want to see a lot of draws or anything.
You know,
Like
an 8-map series.
I got to go to work next day. Come on, man. I got to drive back. Like I got to do that. So, but it's gonna be a phenomenal game. Like even if it goes 4-0, like worst case scenario, some team takes it 4-0. It's gonna be a spectacle to watch at that point. Like you're just gonna see these clearly top 2 teams duking it out. And if one team is that much better than the other one, then clearly they deserve the championship at this point because these 2 teams have been the story of the season. I mean, the Dragons played phenomenally in stage 3, but they were a fluke at that point. Like it has always been Shock Titans in season 2. Stage 1, it was Shock Titans figuring out the GOATS meta in Overwatch League. Stage 2 was the Shock Titans perfecting the GOATS meta. Stage 3 was, oh crap, they can play more than 2 DPS. What do we do now? And then obviously stage 4, we didn't get any playoffs, but the Shock dominated stage 4. So, and the Titans also did very well. So, I couldn't ask for a better final. Like as much as I love the Cinderella stories, as much as I love, the lower bracket, climbing out of the play-in tournaments and stuff like that, like we saw at a Philly. I think this is great for the league, like just watching the top 2 teams make it to the very end and then duke it out because going into the playoffs, going into stage 4, there was a lot of question about like 2-2-2, competitive integrity, and it's nice to say that really doesn't matter. Like these the better teams adapted, obviously played to the highest level and made it anyway. So I think in Blizzard's case, this is best case scenario because people can't say, well, 2-2-2 ruined it. Like we got like the, if the say the Charge played Atlanta in the finals, like then people would be like, well, it's just because of 2-2-2. Like the other teams were better all year long. So I think this is best case scenario. I think it's going to be a phenomenal game. I am super pumped for it. Like every day I'm getting more and more excited. Like even today at work, we were talking about our plans. Like we finally figured out what we were going to do, like where we're, what time we're leaving and stuff. So
how many Philly cheesesteaks are you going to eat?
How many Philly cheesesteaks I am going to consume with my face. Like it is going to be a phenomenal weekend. So I can't wait. Like let's just end the show and let me just go to Philly. So no, I don't want to go to Philly. I don't actually like Philadelphia, low key. I don't want to. I'll throw that out there. Like not my favorite city to go to. And I live in between Baltimore and Washington, so that should tell you something. But it's gonna be a great game, and then I can't wait to talk about it next week because next week it's gonna be like, oh my god, this was ridiculous, and I saw Erster do a flip off the bandstand, and whoever's gonna show up there or whatever, Zed brought out DJ Khaled as a redemption act, and who knows? Like I can't wait.
Oh man, yeah, and I mean, for me, like the biggest scene, like while the Titans have been almost unbeatable on Control, well, I mean, so far anyway, on the playoffs, they haven't really had the same. They haven't done the same against the Shock, at least across the season, because Shock right now, in regards to the Control maps, are up 3-2, so we'll see how that comes into play. So it's not like a foregone conclusion that Titans will be able to continue their dominance on that map type. But, that's going to be the key thing I'm going to be paying attention to over the weekend. But I can't wait. Like, when all is said and done, you're not going to feel robbed of, whoever was competed in the grand finals. We'll finally get to know who the better team is when all is said and done. Because at the end of the day, the championship is what matters. Who stands tall at the end of the season. And you know what? I can't wait to have another championship skin for, you know, a team that I root for, primarily. That's all that matters.
That's the position I'm in. It's like I've been a Runaway fan for as long as Runaway has been Runaway. But I also root for the Shock. Like, I've rooted for them since last season. Like, they were low key one of the teams that I hope did well, because I always like seeing the mixed rosters do well. So it would be nice to see the Shock win, so teams just don't go all Korean next year, because you could kind of make a better argument. Not that there isn't already a better argument that mixed teams do well, but so I'm torn, and I was talking about it today with the guy I'm going with, and I was like, you know what, I don't even care who wins at this point. Like, I will be happy either way. This is like second best case scenario for me. Like, obviously best case scenario would be like Dallas playing the Fuel in the finals, so I could, you know, somebody's gonna win or we're both gonna lose. Like, it doesn't matter. But you know, this is gonna be a great game, and that's what I'm gonna enjoy. Like, it's gonna be like the World Cup. Like, all right, I'm rooting for the USA, but I'm just gonna enjoy the experience and watch some guys probably not click on heads this time. I don't think we'll see a whole lot of Widowmaker based on that, but we'll watch some balls get thrown in faces.
But what you will see at the World Cup is a lot of confusion in regards to the jerseys, since they all look the same.
Hey, if one Coca-Cola branded team could beat another Coca-Cola branded team, then that's capitalism.
But yeah, we'll talk more about the merchandise on H&D. There's a lot of female fans that are not too happy with the new merchandise and the line work. So yeah, that's
yeah.
Gotta wonder who came up with that.
That's an oof.
Yeah, that's a pretty big oof on that front. But with that being said, guys, we hope everyone enjoys the grand finals. I'm sure we'll have, you know, a bunch of people hanging out for the grand finals in our Discord over the weekend, so be sure to join us on that page. If you're going to the grand finals, enjoy your trip in Philly. Hopefully everyone meets up with the podcasters that are going to be out there, because I know we're going to have quite a few people on hand, Spider included. And, you know, I know a bunch of people have been talking about on the High Noon Discord about who's all going, because I have a text channel for everyone that's going to be in attendance on that front. But with that being said, we are going to close out the show for tonight. So if you guys want to help us out, the best thing to do is to go leave us a review over on iTunes. Let us know how we're doing, what you'd like to see incorporated. So it is worth noting, like, we're getting pretty close to the off season. So, you know, we might change the format a little bit. Obviously, you know, we got some events coming up, like the Gauntlet, which, you know, we could honestly probably spread that out over a couple of episodes, just because that is a pretty lengthy tournament, as it is double elimination. And we got some pretty hype series in that. I know that they do have a bracket generator for that as well, much like they did for the Overwatch League playoffs. So, you know, we'll mix it up a bit. Like, we wanted to do, like, chopping block segments, but I'm curious to see how it's gonna pan out, since we're probably gonna see a lot of LFT posts, so that might kind of be off the board. So, we'll figure it out as we go along, guys. Don't worry on that front. But if you guys want to find additional Overwatch content, be sure to check out Overwatch Recall. That is our podcast directory for all things Overwatch, whether it's, you know, general Overwatch, esports, Overwatch League, Path to Pro, all of that good stuff on our website. And then every Sunday, sometimes Mondays, we do the weekly recall, which has a listing of all the prior week's episodes from all of the Overwatch podcasts out there. So for more info, be sure to follow Overwatch Recall on Twitter at OWRecall. Now, if you would like to support our podcast network, you can do so a couple different ways. Right now, it is September over on Twitch, so you have half off subs on that front. Any Twitch Prime subs thrown our way are also greatly appreciated. And then outside of that, we do have our Patreon page at patreon.com/OWL Network, where we have tiers starting at just $1 a month. so you too can join the likes of our master and above patrons, Blaze and Bob, Brendan, Josabal, Owl, and Kesha, in helping our network grow. So I want to thank everyone, again, who's been helping us out along the way, helping, pay for all of the, podcast fees that go with hosting, all of that good stuff. Every little bit adds up for sure. So outside of that, we do have a number of different ways how you guys can get a hold of us. So Spider, why don't you let them know how they can do that?
Sure, you can email the show at contact@owlnshow.com. You can check out our website where we post all the shows, various articles, and other things at www.owlnshow.com. Twitter at owlnshow. YouTube, youtube.com/Overwatch League Network. If you're struggling with Sigma in comp, I did put out the deep dive video a little while ago, so go check that out. If you'd like to talk to us directly, you can do so on Discord, discord.me/OWLN as Toto mentioned, probably a lot of people hopping around for the grand finals, so come in and chat with us. I'll probably post, I promise to not overdo it, but I'll probably post a few pictures in Discord from the finals.
Yeah, you're going to be giving me FOMO otherwise.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're listening to the audio version, you can check us out live at twitch.tv/OWLN show. As Toto mentioned, we are an affiliate and it is September. So, subscribing helps support the channel. And if not, definitely hit the follow button so you know when we go live. We do multiple shows throughout the week. The one you're currently listening to is Overwatch League Network. It is Monday nights at 7 p.m. I've only done freaking 100 shows, and I don't know what time we do it on. Miss 1 week. So Overwatch League Network airs Mondays at 7 p.m. Pacific time. Tuesdays is Fantasy Overwatch, which is Overwatch League by the numbers, or L by the numbers. And that is Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Pacific time.
Yeah, that has wrapped up for the season, so just an FYI. We did our 2019 Fantasy finale this past week. So, that one is seasonal. I don't know if we're going to do kind of like anything in between. So Tuesday could potentially be opened up for another host stream night moving forward until Season 3 kicks off. But as soon as we have more details on that, we'll let you guys know.
Well, there you go. So Tuesday nights, random. Wednesday nights, also random, with a slight focus on Overwatch for Heroes Never Die, our variety Overwatch show with Totem and Edinar, or as the podcast will be rebranded, Weird Stories by Edinar. That is Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Pacific time. You can hear all about Overwatch and how Ed gets a razor stuck in his ear, I guess, or nose. I don't know. I didn't hear the full story. Kind of passed out. But yeah, that's Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Pacific. And then, like Totem mentioned, we do host streams. So hit that follow button. I'll probably get back to playing Overwatch this week because I need to grind out that Bastion skin. And after the mayhem that is Borderlands, I am ready to get back in. I did have a lot of fun tonight. So, that's Thursdays through Mondays and maybe Tuesdays now. We'll figure this out, so it'll be much cleaner next time. Like, I'm so used to just having show after show after show. But check out the host streams. We'll have some shenanery going on. And then finally, one more time, patreon.com/OWL network. Just another way to help support the show. So you can find me on Twitter at SpiderGD. Totem, where can they find you?
I'm also on Twitter at TotemlyDrunkCTR. So outside of that, obviously, grand finals are this weekend. We'll probably have a couple of us in the voice chat. So hang out with us. Let us know. Talk how the Titans just absolutely dominate the Shock. That won't happen. Let us know what you think of all the DJ performances first and foremost, because that's the most important thing. Whether or not it was a complete memery, like Khalid, all of that good stuff. But with that being said, guys, enjoy the grand finals, safe travels, and if we don't see you back for Wednesday for another night of the game going off the rails, more so than usual, we'll see you back next Monday for episode 98. But with that being said, guys, that will do it for us here tonight on Overwatch League Network. I've been your host, Totally Drunk, joined, as always, by my co-host Spider, and we'll see you guys next time. Have a good night.